Hey everybody, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Well, good evening and welcome to another episode of Warbird Tube. We'd like to welcome all of those of you watching on Facebook, on YouTube, and those who are on GoToMeeting. This is episode 90 of Warbird Tube. And tonight's episode, we're going to chat with a historian from the Boeing company. But before we get started, can you please do us a favor? If you haven't already done so, could you just take a second to like, share, or subscribe and follow us? And if you do subscribe on YouTube, make sure you mash that bell icon and you'll get notifications about new episodes of Warbird Tube every time we go live or post something new. Now, as you're watching the presentation, you may have some questions. Just type them into the comment section of whatever platform you're on, and we will try to answer them either during the presentation or before we sign off. Now, joining me live from Seattle, Washington area is Annie Flodin from Boeing in Washington. Annie, great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve.
Well, first of all, how does one become a historian for the Boeing company?
Yeah, my path was actually pretty unique. I went to school for journalism because I love telling stories. So I did not major in history, nothing like that. I come from a family of aviation. My parents met as flight attendants on Eastern Airlines. My dad was in the Air Force. He started off in the B-17, so I'm repping that with my shirt here. And I just started applying to airlines and to Boeing, essentially, hoping that I could find a job in communications that tied to aviation in some way. And I was very, very fortunate to get a job with the company in Chicago doing corporate communications. And lucky for me, our senior corporate historian, Mike Lombardi, came out to present one day and I was hooked. He and his team saw my desk just packed with books and models and figured I'd be a good fit for the team. So they just took me under their wing and brought me aboard. And I've been with this team for about 4 years now. And it's truly a dream job.
What is a typical day for a historian?
A typical day for a historian at Boeing involves a lot of research, a lot of things, and I'd say in general, just a lot of storytelling. And that's super fortunate for me since that really is my passion. I run our company's internal news channel called Our History. So I oversee a group of other aviation enthusiasts. We have about 8 writers that just get to write stories about aviation history. And I do a lot, as I mentioned, a lot of research. That's the case with our entire team. We have a couple historians and a few archivists as well. So researching for different people within the company, whether it's an engineer, we'll go back into our archives and pull old engineering drawings that might help our engineers today from having to reinvent the wheel. Some old design that might prove helpful today. We do a lot of research for our legal department and get to go back and do a lot of research to help out our sales and marketing teams. So we will hear about an upcoming anniversary for an airline and go back, dig through our files, pull out all the cool photos dating back to, the 50s and help our sales team craft that story to sort of show how much we value the relationships that we've had with our customers over the year. And then a lot of presentations. I go around the company and tell the Boeing story to sort of help boost morale and just inspire the people that are working at the company. Not a lot of people know what a rich history we have. And so I'm really proud and I always get very excited to be able to go and tell people about it.
Well, and you from what you just described, you've now blended your love of aviation and writing and history all together to be able to make those kinds of presentations.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a dream job. And when I got onto this team, I was essentially joining a team of people who had been working at the company for 20, 30, 40 years. And so I was sort of bridging the gap between the old and the new, sort of testing the waters with new technology. How can we, get our archives into the digital age? And so it really was me just kind of drafting up my own dream job and putting it into action. And it has been amazing. I mean, every day is just truly a gift that I get to go there and just sit amongst 106 years of aviation history, dig into the treasures that we have there. It's just incredible. I'm very, very lucky.
What are some of the reactions that you get from maybe some of the newer employees or younger employees of Boeing who only know of the fighter jets and commercial airliners that Boeing has produced in the last few years, and you start talking about the history of the company going back to 1916?
I mean, one of my favorite things is recently we've been able to start doing presentations in person again, and with a group of especially new employees or interns, and literally seeing their jaws drop or hearing them gasp when they hear things like, after World War I, for instance, the company built furniture and boats to keep themselves in business. And the sheer volume of airplanes that Boeing and its many heritage companies built during World War II, when you throw around a number like 100,000 and, peaking at 15 B-17s in a day, it really captures their attention, because compared to what we do today, we still do really awesome stuff, but it doesn't carry that same weight. So I think when they hear about that stuff we did in our earliest days and all the challenges that we overcame, recessions, the Depression, the company just has really continued to, overcome a lot of significant challenges in its history, and to enlighten newer employees and tell them those stories. It's really awesome to see their reactions.
Now, you mentioned the heritage companies. Those are companies that we would know of, especially World War II era, that have now come under the Boeing tent, as it were. What are some of those?
Exactly. Yeah.
Some of those names you recognize.
Oh, absolutely. We talk about our companies. We're referring to 8 in particular, and there are 4 really big ones, which are Boeing itself, McDonnell Aircraft of St. Louis, Douglas Airplane Company of Southern California, and those two, of course, merged in the 60s, and then North American Aviation. And beyond that, we have Hughes, founded by Howard Hughes, the producer, aviation pioneer. We have Jeppesen, so they are still huge in navigation, and their founder got his start literally creating these little black books, as he called them, that he would sell to other pilots before computers on airplanes and navigation equipment was really a thing. And let's see, Piasecki. So Frank Piasecki's pioneer of tandem rotor helicopters. And then the last of the 8 is Stearman of Wichita, Kansas. So, legendary for their cadet. And we, of course, went on to build and have a presence in Wichita for a very long time. So, we have, and that's just really the tip of the iceberg. Beyond those big 8 companies, there are so many other little ones that we've acquired as early as the 1920s. And so I always show this chart that shows the various companies when we've acquired them throughout the years, and that's just the high level one. There's one that the print is so small when you print it out that it's not even worth showing it to anyone. It's just ridiculous.
Well, and you mentioned some of those companies that were competitors before World War II, but the the feeling in the country once the United States was in World War II was really pulling together. And I think one of the really cool stories is the fact that Boeing licensed other companies to build the B-17 because they just needed more airplanes than what could come out of the Seattle plant.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's one of my favorite stories about the company's past as well. Just sort of the whole building the arsenal of democracy. Boeing, I believe the first airplane that they built of another manufacturer's design was the Douglas DB-7 at their own factory up here in Seattle. But yeah, as you mentioned, there was a committee called the BDV committee. I think I have that acronym right. It's Boeing, Douglas, Vega being Lockheed subsidiary. And those were, of course, the companies that built all of the B-17s. And just, seeing the way that these competitors came together for a common goal and what they were able to do is just one of my favorite stories, just the sheer volume of aircraft that they produced. And, everyone was building airplanes for the same goal. And it's really inspiring to me. Well,
speaking of the B-17, this is the prototype that started the legend, as it were.
Yeah. The story of the Model 299 is one of the biggest in our company's history. It's one of my favorites to tell because in 1934, when the Army requested a bomber, Boeing was not doing very well. So we're, of course, in the middle of the Great Depression, and Boeing actually had been part of this holding company that was called United Aircraft and Transport Corporation. It was a big umbrella company that had underneath it Boeing. It had a bunch of airlines and other propeller manufacturers, engine manufacturers, and they were doing pretty well. It was one of the biggest, most successful corporations of the late 1920s and early 1930s. And 1934, the year that this request for a bomber came out, was the same year that these holding companies were forced to break up. It was a huge kind of scandal and very, very tragic for the company, especially for Bill Boeing. He actually left the company as a result of being forced to break up this holding company. And resulting when UATC broke up, Boeing resulted on the West Coast, United Aircraft manufacturing on the East Coast, which was this company had been co-founded with Fred Rentschler, the founder of Pratt & Whitney. So they were part of the company, and they were represented by United Aircraft on the East Coast, and United Airlines was the third company that resulted, and that is the United Airlines that many of us know and fly on today. So this company had just been forced to break up, Great Depression, and Boeing is not really sure what their future is going to be in. They, throughout the 1920s and into the early 30s, their bread and butter had really been fighter jets or fighter planes. Jets, of course, did not come along for a couple more decades, but fighter planes, that's what they had been best known for. And they were trying to keep competing in the commercial aircraft industry, but Douglas was just dominating it. Boeing had a Model 247. Some of the features can be seen in the B-17, and Douglas came out with a better airplane, the DC-1, that led to the DC-3. So the future was a little bleak, and the company decided to take a gamble when this request for a bomber came out. It was supposed to be a multi-engine bomber, and that typically meant 2 engines. But Boeing wanted to put 4 engines on the plane and actually approached the Army to ask if that would be okay. They wanted to know that they could proceed with this design. So they had some really brilliant people and brilliant engineers working on the program. Claire Egtvedt was the president at the time, and he was the one that really sealed the deal to go forward with building these massive bombers. He laid the groundwork for what became Boeing big airplanes, starting with the bombers and even through the commercial jet age. And then Ed Wells. Ed Wells was with the company for 50 some years. He came to the company in 31, I think it was, and was tasked with designing the B-17 prototype when he was only 34 or 24 years old. So just a kid. And he designed this insane airplane that just was so much bigger and better than the Martin and Douglas designs that it was competing against. And so when Boeing developed this airplane, it was really a big deal. And the nickname, the Flying Fortress, was coined by a local journalist who saw it roll out and gave it that nickname. And Boeing immediately trademarked it, and then they actually went and stole this reporter and hired him into their PR department. So, it was a big deal.
So that story is actually true. Now I've heard that it is true and that it was a rumor, but that you're telling me that is a true story then.
I am telling you it's a true story. Yes, he definitely worked for Boeing after that.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it's just an incredible story of coming together and building this incredible airplane that went on to dominate in World War II.
It wasn't without some hiccups along the development road, though, the 299.
Absolutely, yeah. And as I mentioned when we were chatting earlier, it's a somewhat grim story, but I think it's really important because it just shows the determination that the Boeing company had. So when the Army called these three companies out for a competitive fly-off, it was Martin with their 146, Douglas with the B-1, and Boeing's 299. They were out in Dayton, Ohio for a competitive fly-off. And for the first few days, Boeing's airplane was just impressing everyone so much more than either of the other ones. Everyone essentially knew that this was going to be the airplane that would win. And we even have, so one of the actually sadder archives that we have in our collection is a letter that Boeing received the day before the Model 299 crashed. And it was sent to us by Boeing's test pilot. And he was reporting back to the Seattle office to tell them how good this airplane was doing. He was so happy, so proud to be part of the Boeing team. And then little did anyone know that after he wrote that letter, he would die the next day. So the 299 went to take off. Les Tower was the pilot's name, the Boeing pilot. In there as well was Army Major Pete Hill. And what happened is that they forgot to unlock the control surfaces. And this airplane was so advanced and, for lack of a better word, complex compared to past airplanes. There was so much going on in the flight deck that it was actually kind of understandable that they missed one step. And so with that accident, it was tragic. Boeing was disqualified from the competition. The Douglas DB-1 won and went on to become the B-18 Bolo. And but something good came out of it in that after that, when they realized the mistake that the pilots had made, Boeing and the Army together invented the checklist. So that's why we have a pre-flight checklist today for pilots. Of course, they look a little different today. Most are digital, but so there's that. And then even after Boeing lost the competition, the Army Air Corps was just so impressed, and they had to have this plane that just a few months later, they scrounged up some discretionary funds and placed an order for 13 YB-17s. And that was really the start of the B-17 becoming the airplane that you think of when you think of World War II and when you think of World War II bombers. And yes, I love this photo of them flying over Manhattan. So yeah, there were struggles. The whole thing was a risk. Boeing built the prototype at its own expense, and it cost a lot of money at that time to do something like that. And they persisted, they faced tragedy, but they still ended up going through with this amazing airplane.
And true, it was something, and we see the B-17s today, and if you fly in one or you get to do a ground tour, when you look at the airplane today compared to what we're used to, even in just general aviation, not talking about military aviation, it seems like a very simple airplane. But as you point out, it was in its time years and years ahead of anything else that was out there, and it really was a complex machine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this was sort of the pinnacle of innovations and developments in engineering design and aircraft design that had started a few years earlier with planes like the monomail and Boeing's B-9 bomber. Very streamlined, all metal construction, and unlike the planes of the late 20s for sure, and so much different than what we had seen in World War I. And it does look kind of simple and old when you look at it now, but it was just this masterpiece when it rolled out. And it was certainly the queen of the skies of its time.
It certainly was. And Bill Boeing was also a consummate master of public relations as well, to keep the B-17 in the public's eye. There are some who will argue that the consolidated B-24 was a better aircraft because it could fly higher and a little faster and carry more load, but Boeing always seemed to come out on top in the PR game, and always keeping the B-17 and the Boeing name in front of the public.
I'm not sure quite how they did it, but I feel like Boeing bombers, when you think of World War II bombers, you think of the name Boeing, and you think of that logo, and you think of the B-17, and you think of the B-29 as well. But, the B-24 was the most produced, but the B-17, just what that airplane was able to handle. Like, I just watched Memphis Belle the other day, and just seeing these planes come back and the damage that they sustained, missing half a tail. I mean, you can't compare it to anything else. It just was the most rugged, safest airplane for these young men to be going out and risking their lives in.
It certainly was. Mentioning the Memphis Belle, we've got a picture of the Belle itself and the crew.
Yes.
The first recognized crew to get to 25 missions, and there's debate about that as well, but we'll just leave the Memphis Belle as it is. But definitely one of the most famous of the B-17s.
Absolutely. Yeah, I never, that particular airplane and its story, and just the footage from the movie is what always gets me. Just it's hard to believe that they were able to put that together and have that real firsthand experience that you can actually watch today. I think not a lot of people understand or appreciate what these crews went through, and flying in below freezing temperatures and coming in to land a plane while you're seriously injured. It's incredible and so inspiring.
I'm thinking that most of our audience has seen the original Memphis Belle documentary, the William Wyler documentary. And you mentioned the conditions in the aircraft. And to think, because I come out of a film background myself, that the thought that you're running a film camera in minus 30 degrees, and the fact that he was able to bring back any footage whatsoever, let alone color, which was cutting edge in itself. So putting that all together really, I think, cemented the B-17's image as the lead bomber of World War II.
Absolutely, yeah. And some of the footage of the Memphis Belle has been surfacing a lot lately, just because of Queen Elizabeth and her passing. And she famously made a visit to that crew, and so I was inspired to watch and rewatch the original footage. But yeah, he's captured what it was like in terms of what you would see, what it sounded like, That is a must watch for sure. Very, very inspiring, and the closest I think that any of us will ever get to experiencing what it was like over there.
That's right. Well, we're looking at the B-17s, the 5,000th, number 5,000. That's a very famous picture in itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Seeing this photo in particular, just, I feel like it represents so much. It represents the arsenal of democracy. So the companies coming together to build these airplanes. And there's women in it. That's one reason I love this photo as well. Is just the story of Rosie the Riveter during World War II, and how these incredible women came in to fill this significant void that was left by men going off to war. And I feel like we see so many pictures of just the airplanes flying or in the production facility in the factory, but seeing all these people and how proud they were, it's like, I can't even think of something that would happen today that we would all be that proud and get everyone out in front of an airplane like that. It's just, it's very, very inspiring. And this picture is one of my favorites.
And it's signed by almost all the people who helped put it together, which is incredible. When you look at it, and you see all the names that are on it. Also incredible is when you look at the picture and you start to dive into the details. I love this lady right here in the center. She looks like she's ready to go out to dinner. She's wearing a nice hat.
She is. She's wearing like her Sunday best. Yeah.
It's absolutely awesome.
Yeah, and actually one thing that I love about the Rosies of the time was that Boeing did have these special uniforms designed for women. I think that the designer's name was Muriel King, I think. And they wanted them to be practical, but also like have a touch of glam. And so they had very fashionable clothing that they could wear that was functional. They had these special patches that we have a collection of in our archives that women would wear on their sleeves to designate which department they were part of. So there was like a typewriter for office workers, some sort of a tool representing those who were out there doing riveting work. And just seeing the women at this time was really, really inspiring.
And of course, inspiring women, the famous WASP photo. And we've seen this photo thousands of times to represent the WASP. But the cool part is there's a B-17 in the background.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the WASPs are amazing. I was fortunate when I went to the Women in Aviation conference earlier this year. I met an author who wrote a book about her grandmother who was a WASP pilot. And so her firsthand accounts about these women, I mean, they did so much. There were times when they would fly planes that even male pilots didn't want to fly, but they said, sure, we'll do it. They were just had so much, I don't even know the right word. They were willing to do whatever it took, and just similar to the Rosies, step in and fill this gap that had been created by the men going off to fight. But to me, this is fighting as well. This is amazing.
So if you're wondering, if you've watched our show, you know that Erin Miller is the author that Annie's talking about, Final Flight, Final Fight.
Yes.
And she continues to be an advocate for the WASP. In fact, she's I think I saw some pictures recently. I think she's at the NBAA convention this week.
Yeah,
telling
I
the
saw
story.
those as well.
Yeah. So it's very cool. So if you haven't seen the episode we did with her, go back in our archives and you can check that out as well. So the B-17, obviously World War II comes to an end. B-17s pretty much are relegated to the scrap heap. The B-29 has come along and kind of surpassed everything that the B-17 was in the beginning of the war, but it built on the B-29 built on the technology of the B-17. So there's only a few left, but tell us how you got involved with this particular airplane. And that would be Sentimental Journey.
Yeah, so I, even outside of work, I'm a huge aviation enthusiast. I go out to Boeing Field almost every night after work, and I just sit and take photos of the airplanes and just love being there. When I saw that, I think the plan was for the B-17 and the B-25 to come into town, I got very excited. Unfortunately, I think the B-25 had some issues and was stuck out in Eastern Washington. But I heard that Sentimental Journey was coming, and I just wanted to be involved in any way that I could, because I had never seen one fly. I had never seen a B-17 fly, much less fly on one myself. I had seen them in museums. We of course have one here at the Museum of Flight, but I knew I wanted to be there. I wanted to see it come in for the first time, and I got so fortunate. I had made connections with the Commemorative Air Force several years ago when That's All Brother came out to Spirit of St. Louis Airport. And that crew was so nice to me. They just took me under their wing, brought me on the plane, and I was just shocked. I was immediately hooked, and every time a Commemorative Air Force plane would come to a local airport, I would want to be out there. So I saw that Sentimental Journey was coming, was fortunate to get connected with the right people. I definitely have to give a shout out to Mike Garrett at the Arizona wing. He was just so kind to me and got me hooked up with the right people here. And not only was I able to take so many photographs of the plane coming in and out of Boeing Field, but I was able to get to know the crew and actually flying it myself, which was a dream come true. And to be honest, as a storyteller at Boeing and someone who is tasked with going out and telling people about these planes, to be able to have that firsthand account of what it's like, what it feels like to be on a B-17 is really special. And I feel like it was certainly such a cool thing and an experience I will absolutely never forget, but it'll really help me in my storytelling going forward. So I'm so appreciative. It was just a great few days that the crew was out here.
And you wrote an article that kind of chronicles the history of the airplane itself. But
Yes.
as far as Boeing's archives go, it would probably, the history of the airplane would end when it was given to the military, correct?
It pretty much did, yeah. So we typically, that's the case. We have history of certain airplanes up until they're delivered, and beyond that, it's not ours anymore. So we don't have much. Fortunately, in the case of Sentimental Journey and some of these other restored Warbirds, we will have some additional records from more recent history, just because our team is lucky to be able to help with the restoration oftentimes. Might not be hands-on rebuilding of the airplane, but usually our team will provide drawings or any other information back from when it was originally built that could help crews to sort of recreate it in its most authentic state.
Awesome. Well, talk us a little bit through about what you know of the history of the airplane itself.
Yeah, so I know that this particular airplane was built by Douglas, which I thought was very cool. And although it didn't see combat, I still think that its history is very special. A lot of the B-17s didn't see combat, but it served in an air and sea rescue role. I believe as a fire bomber as well, and you can absolutely correct me if that's not the case. But it's come to be the most, at least I read this somewhere and I'm going with it, the most authentically restored B-17 out there. So, but just any of these planes, when they've been sitting for so long and they start to rot away and not look too good, to see them come back to life in this way is just so special. I just was amazed when I got to go inside and see how meticulous the interiors were. It's awesome.
We're taking a look at some of the photos of the B-17. Are these your photos?
These are, yes.
Okay. Well, very good.
Thank you. Yeah, I was very fortunate to, I think I asked that crew every time I was out there, can I just go out there once more? I just always would go out for a couple more pictures, and I would notice something else that I wanted to photograph. But this ball turret gunner, seeing footage and photos of people in there is just crazy to me. I can totally understand why it was one of the dreaded positions to sit in this thing. But yeah, getting to walk around and touch the plane and, you know, be inside it was very, very magical. And I loved the story about the turret on top and how it came. I believe it was from a restaurant, I think, is where they found this piece to I may have that backwards, but I think that it came from the Bomber restaurant in Oregon.
Oh, okay.
So pretty cool.
So this is at Boeing Field in Seattle, right?
Yes, right outside the Museum of Flight, and it drew quite a crowd. And that's another thing that I love about the Commemorative Air Force planes when they come out to a local airport, is you see people from all walks of life and all ages just come out and be completely awed by these planes, which is so cool.
Of course, this wasn't the first time that Sentimental Journey made its way out to Seattle.
Yeah, that was a pleasant surprise for me when I decided to go back and do a little bit of digging. I tried tirelessly to find, because we have the Douglas archives, I tried to find a photo of this plane in production, and I was not able to. But I did find some of these photos from when it came back to Seattle for the 50th anniversary. And I thought it was so cool to see that 50, or not 50, but, you know, I guess it would be 80 some years later, that from when the plane, the 299, rolled out, that it's still flying, and to see that it's celebrated in a way similar to how it was in the 80s was really cool. But yeah, these photos, I looked at them and they reminded me so much of the photos I had just taken a few weeks earlier. But, you know, people are dressed a little differently, but that's about it. The plane looks just as nice. And yeah, there it is today. I feel, yeah, it's just very, very cool to see that juxtaposition of something from the 80s to today. And, you know, I wish that this plane would come back for the 100th. I feel like if that somehow happened, that would just be incredible. But yeah, this crew here, they were just the most fun to hang out with for a week, and I was absolutely honored. And you can tell how each one of them, how devoted they are and passionate about flying this plane, and how privileged they all feel to be able to do it, which is really cool.
Great. We've got a couple of questions from the audience, and knowing our audience, they're going to get a little technical on us. So let's see what we can do here.
Okay.
What are the major differences between the B-17G, the F, and the E model?
Oh my gosh, you know, that might be getting a little too me. I will say that if our senior corporate historian was on with me right now, he would rattle off all the differences, no problem. I know the E and the F for me are very difficult to distinguish. The G, of course, was the most heavily armed. The plane's performance actually peaked with the F. That's when they got everything figured out just right to make it the most efficient and most perfectly suited for what it was meant to do. But the the G was most produced and most heavily armed. It had the addition of the chin turret, which is the most distinguishing factor, for me at least. beyond that, I'm just going to save myself the embarrassment and not even try to go into the technical specifications.
Right, and through those models, the tail design of the B-17 changed as well, and that was one of the things that's evolved through the evolution of different models, from the smaller tail to the larger tail in
exactly
the G.
Yeah, the E model was the first to be mass produced and was the first to have that big tail. Mm-hmm. That very classic for Boeing airplanes, the big Boeing tail. So yeah.
Of course, the other sort of I guess modifications to the G model is the having the plexiglass for the waist turret, or for the waist gunners, so they were not flying in the slipstream, and then the Cheyenne tail, which replaced the canvas tail from the earlier models, that kind of helped keep things just a tad bit warmer inside the airplane.
Absolutely, yeah. And one of the people in this photograph here, when we were inside the plane, I can't remember who it was, explained to me when the change was made for the waist gunners, and they stacked them because they had been bumping into each other in the past. And I'm struggling to remember exactly when that change happened, but that was something that I had not realized until I was able to go inside the plane myself.
Yeah, I believe that was a modification on the G, because, as you said, on the earlier models, the waist gunners were basically backing into each other as they were trying to defend the bomber. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of our viewers is wondering, what was the role of the B-15 in development of the B-17?
Yeah, so the B-17 and the B-15 were developed essentially concurrently at the same time. The B-15, that project started shortly before the the Model 299 did, but it actually didn't first fly till I think it was a couple years after the Model 299 first flew. That also was a huge experimental big bomber, but just didn't turn out to be quite as practical as the Model 299 design to go forward. I think some of the other big companies, Douglas, I'm trying to think of who else, were also had sort of this one-off huge multi-engine bomber that they were using for experimental purposes as well. But the B-15, certainly a special one. I know that we call it Old Grandpappy. I think that's what the guys who flew it called it as well. But just one of them built. But yeah, as far as I know, they were developed sort of at the same time, just with different end goals.
There we go. In the archives, are you familiar at all with the Army Air Force's film that Clark Gable made with the B-17 with the 351st Bomb Group?
I'm not, but it's intriguing.
Yes, I think that's one of those that transcends it's Boeing, but it's beyond where your archives would end and the Army Air Force would kind of pick up.
Yeah.
So, like many of the Commemorative Air Force aircraft, anytime that a veteran who flew on the airplane or worked on the airplane comes out to see it, we ask them to sign the airplane. It's an honor roll of some pretty magnificent heroes who have helped preserve our freedoms.
Absolutely, yeah. Seeing all these signatures just blew my mind. And I think, is this the one that talks about the night bombers, the Leaflet Squadron, these B-17s that were painted black? Like, I didn't know about that until I was underneath this airplane. I'm relatively new to this role, generally speaking, with regard to other people on my team here at Boeing. And so I'm learning all the time, and seeing these people describe in their own words what they were doing, and then going back in the archives and doing a little research myself on it was just very, very eye-opening to learn some of the more unique roles that the B-17 played. I always tend to think of the 8th Air Force and these incredible bombing runs to go destroy factories, and but they did some pretty interesting kind of weird things too.
True. And the B-17 actually served, as you say, we think of it mostly with the 8th Air Force and being in Europe, but it served in all the theaters, and also from the very first of the war, the B-17s that were arriving at Hickam Field on December 7th, 1941, until the very end of the war. So it was a design that spanned the entire length of the United States involvement in World War II.
Exactly. Yeah. And I wanted to mention earlier, the one thing that inspires me about this plane as well is just how it sort of came to fulfill Billy Mitchell's vision of strategic air power. I just think, despite it not being the plane that was named for him, I still think it's very cool. But yeah, I mean, he had this vision that the airplane could be used in so much more of a strategic role in wars, and this is the plane that really brought that vision to life. And he sadly wasn't around to see that really happen, but yeah, it was very, very cool to see that.
Do you know offhand, because we talked just briefly a few minutes ago about the tail design, but do you know why the tail was changed? I understand that it was not effective at high altitudes, and then that's why the bigger tail was introduced?
That is true. I don't know much beyond that. But yeah, the high altitude flying for sure played a large role, if not being the main reason for the bigger tail there.
One of our other viewers is asking, it said, I would argue that the B-17 as a peacetime design was made to last for years, while the B-24 was an imminent war design made to last 2 years. And he's wondering what your opinion is.
I could see that as well. I feel like I almost have a similar view on the B-17 versus the B-29. That was, I do. I think the B-17 was designed to be timeless. It was designed with so many roles in mind. It just ended up being so effective in its missions in World War II. But yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. And as I mentioned with the B-29 as well, that, a lot of people think of it as kind of the most important plane of World War II because it brought everything to an end. But the B-17, I mean, it dropped more bombs than any other airplane in World War II. So I would almost argue that's the most important airplane of the war. There were a lot of defining moments, but what seemed to stick in most people's minds is the very end. But yeah, the B-17 is timeless for sure.
Well, and again, like we see in the Warbird community, aircraft that were designed during the war or were produced during the war, not necessarily designed, but any aircraft that could find some sort of commercial or other afterlife after World War II, after being a military bomber or fighter, whatever, those are the aircraft that we see today on the Warbird circuit, because there was a reason why they stuck around. And B-17 is one of those. As you mentioned, like with Sentimental Journey, it was a fire bomber. Other exactly. B-17s were, they did aerial mapping and fighting fire ants and cargo, and they had all those roles going for them, where some of the other aircraft, like B-24, for example, didn't lend itself to that sort of thing. So that's why they're still around today. There's still a few of them around, but I think it goes back, as our viewer was pointing out, is that the design itself was really a timeless design, almost exactly. Like the DC-3. Yeah.
Yes, the DC-3 is a perfect example, and I would argue it's the greatest airplane of all time. Just because of that, the multiple uses that it has been known for, not just in the 30s, but up until today.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it's gone from being a machine of war to a machine of education, and that's the role that it plays today, and not only education but also is flying tributes to the greatest generation.
Yes, no, and that's what I love so much about this organization and about these airplanes and their crews, is just that they mean so much to so many people in so many different ways. The education is just, when I was out there one day with the airplane at Boeing Field, there was probably a 7 or an 8-year-old kid just walking around spitting out facts about aviation history that I didn't even know. And it's mind-boggling to me how intriguing these older airplanes that are so different from what we know and fly on today, how they sort of draw in children, especially because they're so loud, they look so different, and the education portion of this and the ways that these planes are used for that is so inspiring to me. And but the tribute to the greatest generation and getting to put some of these veterans back on the planes that they one day were risking their lives in, it's just, when I think about that, I cry almost every time. And that's how I felt when I was on this plane. It's such a weird mix of emotions. It's like, oh my gosh, this is a dream for an aviation enthusiast like myself. But then, like, if you just try to put yourself into the mindset of being in this plane in sub-zero temperatures and, dodging flak and being shot at, it's so crazy. But these are certainly the most unique and special pieces of aviation history.
So as we look at Sentimental Journey and contrast that with, for those of you who know the airplane, Texas Raiders. Texas Raiders has got the olive drab paint scheme, and Sentimental Journey is in the bare aluminum. Is there and I know what I've heard, but the reason why the original or early model B-17s were painted versus at the end of the war, they just came out bare aluminum. Have you, in any of your research, found any definitive reasons?
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, and I'm pretty confident about it, and this goes across the board for all of these Warbirds, it was simply to save money, save time, and save weight. The planes could fly that much faster and be that much more efficient if they didn't have, a few coats of paint on them, which boggles my mind, because I think of just painting a little, a couple coats would, to me, I think that would weigh nothing. It seemed to have made quite a difference. And that, that actually, when I learned that, really, I was very intrigued. I had no idea, but yeah, that's what I've heard.
Here, one of our viewers, would you like to comment on the old joke that the B-24 was the box the B-17 came in?
No.
First of all, have you heard that before?
To be completely honest, I have not.
Okay.
So, well, new joke to me.
It's an old joke, but so it's been around a while, but I think that's just a little bit of a play on the B-24's more boxy design versus the sleeker design of the B-17.
For sure.
One of our viewers is asking how many B-17s are still flying. Define still flying. I believe there are 12 airworthy B-17s. Obviously, the Commemorative Air Force has 2, Texas Raiders and Sentimental Journey. Yankee Lady, I know, is flying. EIA's Aluminum Overcast is down for maintenance. There are several others out there that may or may not fly, so the number is dwindling, but there are still a few out there. So it all depends on how you define still flying. And here's Here's a really good question. What's your most favorite Boeing airplane? Now, we're going to take the B-17 out of this equation. So you have to tell us your favorite airplane that's not a B-17, because we know you're a fan of the B-17.
Absolutely, yeah. So despite my love of this organization and this airplane and just sort of World War II history, commercial aviation is actually my passion. That's where that's what I've studied most, and for me, it's very cliche, but it's the 747.
Okay.
It democratized air travel. It the way it came to be, and Joe Sutter and the whole team of Incredibles. I have a 747 tattooed on my arm. It's like the B-17. It's timeless. And it's the Queen of the Skies 2.0.
There you go. And tell us a little bit about the picture we're looking at right now. Is this your model collection?
This is part of the Boeing archives. So we have just an incredible wealth of artifacts dating back to the 1910s. So we have a facility that's about 25,000 square feet, just to put it into perspective, floor to ceiling artifacts. And we have the world's largest collection of aviation photography at about 4 million photographs and negatives. We have about 20,000 pieces of original artwork, tens of thousands of scale models. For perspective, this is about, what you're looking at is just a portion of one of probably 20 to 30 shelves that look just like this. So, I mean, we have all the planes that we built, all the planes that we didn't build, models dating back to the 1920s. So it's very inspiring place to be. And for me, one of the most interesting parts of the collection are our engineering drawings. So we have, I think, 25,000 or so of those dating back to the 1910s when they were done on linen. And they're very fragile and very special. And that's the case with all of the artifacts that we have at Boeing. It's one of a kind. Not a lot of companies can lay claim to the history that we have. And as far as I know, we're the only aerospace company that has anything like this.
Do you have plans to put any of the archives online for people to search?
We do. So that's we're in the midst of two very exciting projects right now. One is moving the entire Bellevue, Washington, Seattle collection to a new facility. And the other is that we are digitizing 50% of the collection over the course of 5 years. So that started earlier this year. And the goal is to make these treasures accessible to more than just our very small team of historians and archivists. It'll start out just internally at Boeing, but the end goal is certainly to make the photographs and records of these artifacts public.
Awesome. Any timeline as to when that might happen? For the public, at least.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. It is an incredibly lengthy process. Like I said, digitizing 50% of the collection is going to take about 5 years. And then beyond that, we will start the process of actually organizing and doing something meaningful with all of it. So I unfortunately can't put a date or even a year on it, but we're working diligently. I certainly hope that it happens while I'm in this job.
Okay. Well, Annie, just before we wrap up, any final thoughts tonight?
No, I just this was great. I appreciate your time and inviting me. It's a real treat. I learned something. I feel like I'm learning something every day, and it's always awesome just to talk with other people who love aviation and love aviation history. And I am so proud to be a member of the Commemorative Air Force and just really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we appreciate you taking time to share your insights and a little peek under the curtain as to what's in the archives at Boeing. And we wish you the best of luck. Good luck digitizing several million photographs, and we look forward to seeing those in the public sometime soon. So thanks to everyone for joining us tonight, and don't forget to click that like, subscribe, or follow us button so we can let you know about future shows. As always, if you have any ideas for an aircraft you'd like to know more about, or someone that you'd like to have us interview on the program, please send an email to Leah Block at media@cafhq.org. Again, thank you, Annie, for sharing your insights with us tonight on the B-17 and the Boeing archives. And I'm Steve Buss. We'll see you next time right here on CAF Warbird Tube. Have a good night.